Good morning and welcome to the NBA Daily. Coming up, the Cavs win 15 straight again. Zion gets another triple-double, and Eric Nehm is here to talk about the Bucks, who are super down bad after that horrific 4-point play to lose last night. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Zena.
Morning, Dave. How are you?
It's a good morning for everybody if you're not a Milwaukee Buck. How about the freaking Pacers? Tyrese Haliburton just has a knack for hitting these tough shots. Another game winner drawn up. Actually, it wasn't a game winner the first time. So in case you guys didn't see it last night, we got to talk about this just right off the jump because it was an amazing play. The Bucks have a 114-111 lead on the Pacers. You know, I'm getting my notes together. I'm thinking, okay, we got Eric. We're going to talk about how the Bucks have won 9 of their last 12. They're on this great run. Okay, and now we're talking about a Bucks 3-game losing streak because Tyrese Haliburton and the Pacers, they run an inbound play that is the football play that they ran against the Boston Celtics in the playoffs last year. Right. It's the exact same play. Tyrese Haliburton runs an excellent underneath wheel route, catches the ball on the run, shoots a fading three-pointer, and he's fouled by Giannis with 3.4 seconds left, completes the 4-point play. Giannis gets the inbound on the ensuing possession. They didn't have a timeout. He runs down the court and takes his first shot of the fourth quarter. It's a three-pointer, grazes the rim. But man, what a shot by Tyrese Haliburton.
Unbelievable shot, unbelievable poise, especially when you're up in the air and fading to the side. I just cannot believe that Giannis did not allow him to land. It was just like one of those moments where you're like, whoa, no. And also the amount of space that Tyrese Haliburton had to be able to maneuver in that corner between Brook Lopez being on top of the ball, the person that was taking the ball out of bounds, and jumping to the opposite side, as opposed to where Tyrese Haliburton was going. Right. He jumped opposite as opposed to ball side. And then that allowed a little bit more space. So just enough time for Tyrese to catch the ball. And then Giannis wasn't close enough. As tall and as long as Giannis is, he still wasn't close enough to touch Tyrese Haliburton immediately as he got the ball, which allowed him to get the shot up and then a foul because he couldn't land. And shout out to Tyrese Haliburton for hitting that the 4-point play, hitting the free throw, because they iced him. As they were viewing that play, it took a significant amount of time to see if his feet were inside the court in order to get up, and also were they in that 3-point range. So, what a tough finish for the Bucks. And ultimately, you know, it's a tough day overall. They lost a legend within their organization in Junior Bridgman, and then losing that game. I am very curious to see what Eric Nehm has to say about this play.
I hope he brings up the blown defensive coverage because they were confused. Taurean Prince looked like he was in a zone. Kyle Kuzma was just, I don't know, he was running a slant route even though he was playing defense. Anyway, it was a heck of a play for the Pacers, and we'll talk to Eric more about that play in particular after the break. We got to talk about the Cavs because they are once again the biggest story of the night. They win over the Brooklyn Nets, who put a scare into them because that's what the Nets do these days. The Nets are very well prepared. They're very well coached, and they can beat you if they hit shots, and they were hitting shots against the Cavs. But luckily, they got 18 points from Darius Garland in the fourth, and they won their 15th straight game. This is their second 15-game winning streak of the season. They also had a 12-game winning streak. Now, they've become the 6th team ever with 2 winning streaks of 15 or more. Now, you might not remember this, okay? But in 1947, the Capitals did this twice. Now, they went on to lose in the conference finals to the Chicago Stags. Hopefully, the Cleveland Cavaliers, you know, they've got a little bit of a brighter future.
Thank you so much for reminding me. That had slipped my mind. It's one of those things that lives in my, you know. Of course, obviously. Get the Central Division championship. Shout out to them. But also, yes, the first team to do that. 2 15-game win streaks in 20 years. So making some history in that, again, including the LeBron years, right? Like they did not do that during that period of time too. And also they've been scaring us. The Cleveland Cavaliers in the last few games have consistently gotten behind. They haven't been able to get ahead of teams and dominate from the start of teams. In their last 7 games, they've had 4 games in which they got down 15 points. In the 3 games in which they weren't down 15 points, they were still down 7 points in the last fourth quarter. They won all 7. So for them, it's not about necessarily winning the game, but it's like, all right, can you put games away a little bit sooner? Do you have to have these Herculean efforts from Darius Garland in the fourth quarter, which he stepped up 18 points in that fourth quarter. He had only 12 points for the first 3 quarters combined. Cleveland didn't shoot well either. 10 of 42 from the 3-point line. I think Brooklyn had 10 threes in the first half. So Brooklyn really showed up and gave them a test. But again, Cleveland continuing to show us why they are the champs of the East right now. And they're sitting on top and sitting comfortably because of their size inside. Jared Allen, Evan Mobley have great games on the glass. They were down 3 big players, Donovan Mitchell in their starting lineup, and then DeAndre Hunter and Ty Jerome both out as well. So they had to turn to Greg Porter Jr. to be a ball handler alongside Darius Garland. Like, everyone stepped up. Isaac Okoro was great on defense. Like, the bigs were great on the glass. It was a tough effort for the Cavs, but it showed the rest of the league, like, yeah, regardless of who we've got on the floor, we can still pull out wins. Yeah, and that Darius Garland flurry to start the fourth quarter, that's the sort of stuff this is where, him and Donovan Mitchell, I think that they feed so well into each other. And you see a game like this with no Mitchell, and, it probably would have been a little bit of an easier night had he been out there. But to get a win without him, like, this is the important stuff that they need to do. I mean, feels like I looked ahead at their schedule, and I just don't know necessarily like when the streak is going to end. So they've won now 15 straight. They've got Orlando, who we keep talking about, got offensive problems. They got the Clippers coming up, who they lost a game, which we'll get to in a second, to the Pelicans, and they've been scuffling a little bit, especially their last 15 games. They've got the Kings, who are up and down. They've got the Suns, who are struggling. They've got Utah. I mean, we're talking about they've got a real good chance at going to 20 straight, which is so funny. If you do the math, they've won 42 games if you just have those 3 big streaks. That would be the 3rd most wins in the league, tied with the Denver Nuggets, just in 3 winning streaks. Whoa. They've just won so many games. This is kind of how it works out. This is domination. Yeah. They're having an incredible season. Yeah. Speaking of domination. Yeah, shout out. He's going to win Coach of the Year by a mile. Speaking of dominating, hey, the Pelicans, they got to win. They're doing okay in the tank race. They're still Wait, are you saying domination for? Well, the domination was from Zion Williamson, who recorded his 2nd triple-double in the last 5 games, and he had never had one in his career before that. That's just crazy. I think that when you watch him now, and this is we're saying post-trade deadline, clearly he's the guy. He's done this point Zion thing for a while, but what we're looking at right now is I think we're seeing a guy who is healthy, number one. He looks great physically. Had an amazing dunk in this game, of course, because it's Zion. But he now has a clarity of role where it is just, there is no question that the ball is supposed to find him and that he's supposed to create for himself and others. And I just think that what we're seeing out of Zion it's a little bit late, but we're happy to see it now. One of the craziest stats, just looking at his last 10 games, he has either scored or assisted on almost 41 points a game in the last 10 games. New Orleans has averaged 113. That's over a third of the points in their last 10 games he is either directly putting up or contributing to. This is a Zion Williamson that most people would say, of course, he's an offensive powerhouse. He's supposed to do that, etc. But when you talk about knowing his role, with the ball in his hands now, it's not only his particular output on offense, it's his creation. He had a career high 12 assists against the Clippers as well in that triple-double. Everything about what Zion is doing is bouncy. It's aerial. It looks easy. He looks fleet-footed. He's going through defenders with ease, creating just so many decoys in the way that he's supposed to come off screens. He's splitting right through them. And you wouldn't think you can do that with the size of Zion Williamson, but he's doing that with ease. And then taking 2 dribbles and going up for the hammer. You even saw him stop and pop. Oh, yeah. That little jump stop in the lane for a little jumper. Yeah. And you think about the weight that Zion Williamson has had to lose to be able to have that quick of an elevation up in the air, get his whole body aligned for a nice stop and pop. Like this is Duke level Zion, right? Yeah. This is what everyone expected when he came into the league.
Yeah. And when big guys lose weight, they're just really, really strong. They're way stronger at a lower body weight than you would ever expect. So he looks strong. He looks fit. I don't know, having a fun season. They're tanking. They're trying to tank, but he's having a fun season. Guys, stick around after the break. Eric Nehm is going to help us get to the bottom of whatever happened to the Bucks on that one play. The Bucks lost last night in just about the worst way imaginable. Here to break it down and really explain what the hell went wrong, Eric Nehm, our Milwaukee Bucks beat reporter. Eric, what happened on that play where Tyrese Haliburton hits the three? Break down the defense for me. Tell me what went wrong.
Yeah, I mean, the Bucks have a 3-point lead after some Damian Lillard free throws with 3.9 seconds remaining. Rick Carlisle draws up a play that they used in Game 3 of the Eastern Conference Finals last year against the Boston Celtics. It was funny. As I saw them line up, I knew exactly what was coming because I watched that exact play in Gainbridge Fieldhouse last Eastern Conference Finals. Like I covered that game and saw it happen. That time, Aaron Nesmith missed the three. This time, Tyrese Haliburton hits the three. But essentially, for those attempting to imagine this play in their head, you are looking at an NFL 4-wide set. You have all four guys in the backcourt lined up across the court, sideline to sideline, and then they're just going to run crossing patterns. You're going to get everyone running towards the front court, running towards the inbounder, and all you're trying to do is crisscross, mess people up, and get whatever shooter you're looking for to run to the near side corner, nearest to the inbounder. The Pacers executed it to perfection. Miles Turner, Aaron Nesmith were kind of the two guys that Tyrese Haliburton credited after the game for getting him open, but they run their crossing patterns. Tyrese Haliburton comes all the way across the floor, and he manages to be wide open in front of the Bucks bench, hits the three, fouled by Giannis Antetokounmpo on the play. 4-point play, and not only do the Pacers tie the game, they win the game with that play. And I mean, as far as what went wrong, I think in that situation, if you aren't 100% sure what you're doing defensively, it's so unusual. I would guess the Bucks have never defended that. I think the Pacers have ran that play. I know those 2 times because I was in attendance. I think 2 or 3 more times they've ran that play in the last year or so. So you don't see it. It's not normal. Even if you do scout it, even if you are, aware of what their playbook looks like, you probably haven't spent a whole lot of time on it. So the Bucks had a timeout left. They could have called the timeout. They did not. Once you're there, essentially what the Bucks had said was like, that's not something that we switch. You just keep running through, make them call a foul, whatever it may be. Like, just stay connected to your man. That is not what Taurean Prince did. Taurean Prince remained on the left side of the floor as Tyrese Haliburton went across and attempted to communicate and say switch, switch, switch. But when there's 3 other players across the floor, who's switching onto it? Which one of us? And then if one of us does, and they then run to the left corner instead of the right corner, who am I with? And none of those questions were answered. And
too many guys inside the 3-point line, man. You're up 3. What are you doing?
Also correct. I think another way to defend that is they can do whatever they want in the backcourt. Toss it back there for all I care. Whatever. We're not coming back there. We're just going to line ourselves up on the 3-point line, and we're not going to let you shoot a 3. If you want to go inside, you can do that as well. So there's a lot of things that they could have done. Whatever they did was not right. That is not how they handled it. And then on top of it, I think there's even more questions that I asked Doc Rivers after the game about it. Right. So you give it up. One, you decide not to call a timeout before to prepare yourself for this unusual play that you haven't seen before. Okay, that's fine. You try to switch your way through it. That's not what you wanted to do. You try to run your way through it. You didn't do that successfully. You give up the 3. After the 3, Haliburton kind of hits Giannis. Giannis, it didn't feel super illegal to me, but there isn't the full landing space. How do you define a landing space when you're running full speed 3/4 court and falling out of bounds or falling towards a defender, whatever it may be? I don't know. It's harder to find. But the Bucks decide to challenge it to see if they can make it be a tied game. Well, if you don't get that challenge correctly and you lose that challenge, you lose your timeout, you lose the ability to advance the basketball. Then you got to go 3.4 seconds, full length of the floor. And again, when I asked Doc Rivers about that, he said, our bench was pretty confident that Tyrese Haliburton stepped out of bounds when he gathered. So they weren't even worried about, whether or not Giannis fouled. They were of the belief that Haliburton stepped out of bounds on the near side corner on his gather before he let it go. Turned out that the officials did not agree with that. That is not what they
Foster
found.
Doesn't often agree on these challenges.
He does not. So they decided that wasn't the case. And then all of a sudden you're in a spot where you got to go the length of the floor. And to their credit, I think they did a pretty nice job. Giannis was able to make his way up most of the floor. But unfortunately, you have a guy that's barely shot any threes this season, needing to try a three at the buzzer. And then I think you have to think through okay, well, whose hands do we want it in? I understand that they were denying the ball out of Damian Lillard's hands the entire night on every single inbounds. That was their game plan. But also, I saw Damian Lillard hit a game winner with the Milwaukee Bucks last season from about 35 feet, where he was the inbounder, threw it to Brook Lopez, and then caught it back from Brook Lopez and went up the floor and shot a deep three. That was not something that they tried. They had Giannis inbound and then have Giannis try that.
They did that with Giannis, right?
Right. And that worked out in a way, right? Because you did get the ball up the floor and you were able to get a shot off. But I don't think you necessarily want Giannis dribbling 2/3 of the way up the floor and pulling up for three. That's just not a shot that's in his comfort zone. And it didn't go in. And the Bucks lose. And, now they're in a spot where they are tied with the Indiana Pacers with 18 games left in the regular season. The Indiana Pacers are the team that beat them in the playoffs last season in the 3-6 matchup. Obviously, no Giannis last year as he was out with the left soleus strain. But there is lots of residual beef, let's say, between these two teams. They do not like each other very much.
NBA Cup, baby.
That's right.
The NBA Cup last year, they played each other a million times last year. So 4 times during the regular season plus the NBA Cup game. So 5 times during the regular season last year. Add on 6 more games in the postseason, so 11 times. And now all of that leads up to Saturday. Bucks Pacers back in Fiserv Forum, and we get to do it all over again. So, yes, the beef continues. It has been lovely. It has been just a wild storyline over the last year between these two teams, and we just get to keep writing more chapters of it.
Now, people listening to this might be like, man, that crazy play, that's awful that the Bucks lost on that play. But there was way more to this game that went wrong for the Bucks rather than just that play. One, fast break points, 31 fast break points for the Pacers to just 3 for the Bucks. And then the bench, Indiana Pacers bench outscoring the Bucks bench 42-30. I mean, this was bigger than just that play in terms of their offense, in terms of their pace, in terms of just keeping up with the Pacers. And you can't blame Bobby Portis. The Bucks have been pretty okay without him in his absence. What happened tonight and just their ability to match up with the Pacers?
I think it's really kind of a disappointing performance from them in that they did many of the things that they struggled with last season against the Indiana Pacers. You mentioned the fast break points. Excuse me. Well, an easy way to give a fast break points is turn the ball over a whole bunch, and the Bucks committed 15 turnovers tonight, and that is something that plagued them last year in the playoffs. And to me specifically tonight, it was the types of turnovers. It was, let's throw it backwards and oh my gosh, TJ McConnell picked that off. Of course he did. He lives for that. He does it every
all
game.
Day long.
He did it to you 6 games in the playoffs last year, 5 more games in the regular season. You know he's going to do that. Don't throw it backwards. That is going to get picked off. And you just kind of saw a number, the Bucks had an inbounds play out of a timeout. They draw up an ATO. They're trying to get the ball inbounds. They can't do it. And it gets picked off and it turns into a 3. And that was a thing that happened in the playoffs last year. That was a thing that happened at the start of this season. These are problems that have occurred for the Bucks, kind of consecutively for the last year. It hasn't been something that I think for a long time it kind of disappeared, and now it's back. And you just have to think to yourself, okay, mistakes can happen in NBA games. There's 82 of them.
Sure.
It's going to happen, but the same mistakes should not happen. There should be lessons learned, and there should be things done to avoid those same mistakes year over year, game over game. And this, to me, that's part of what made this loss so frustrating or kind of so disappointing to see for the Bucks, is that it was so many of the habits that I would have thought after 11 games against the Pacers last season you weren't going to see again this year. And it just kind of all came back. You have all those turnovers, and you get to a spot where you drop a game that obviously I don't think the Bucks think they should have lost, right? They put themselves in position to have a 3-point lead with 3.9 seconds left, and you could have taught all those same lessons in a win, but at least you would have had the win. And here, now you got to learn those lessons all over again, and you got a loss, and now you are tied with the Indiana Pacers, and you got to fight them off for the final 18 games.
You just wrote about their offense. They're middling, and they shouldn't be. They have Giannis, they have Dame. I mean, this should be at least top 10 offense at all times at any stretch of the season. They should never be middle of the road like they are. Giannis gets one shot in the fourth quarter, the last shot, right? That runner. What do they do between now and the playoffs to juice this offense? Because they're going to have to score more. The defense is fine, but they have to score more.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting thing to think about because throughout this season, when I hear people talk about the Bucks from the outside, it's like, oh, is the defense going to be good enough in the playoffs? And I always have to remind people, the defense has performed better than the offense this year. And as you mentioned, Dave, that's a crazy thing to say, considering Giannis is putting up MVP numbers, improved numbers from last year, one of the most efficient seasons of his career. He's 30 points per game. 30, 11, and 6, doing the same thing that he did last year. That's insane, right? That alone should be enough. But not only do they have that, Dave, they have Dame Lillard putting up 25 and 7 in the 3rd or 4th most efficient season of his entire career. And that is a top 75 all NBA 8-time career. So it's a pretty impressive career. And it's still one of his best seasons. And not only is it that, the Milwaukee Bucks are 2nd in the NBA in 3-point shooting percentage. When I put all of those things, I stack all of those things up, right? That screams amazing offense. That should be a top 5 offense. That should be a top 3 offense. And this season, the Bucks just haven't been able to, systemize.
Man, there's too many times where I'm watching them set up a Brook Lopez post up. There's just, and against Miles Turner even, and Brook is good in the post, but it slows their offense down to a crawl to get these post ups, man. Bobby Portis does the same thing when he's out there.
I would say the first 5 words of that sentence is the biggest thing to me, is that I just watched the Bucks set up something. The best NBA offenses don't feel that way. It's right into it. We're immediately into it. 4
There's
seconds.
A secondary break.
100%.
Exactly.
100%. You get the ball across by 20.
Jokic has these coaches posting up guys at the freaking scorer's table to try to slow him down.
100. But this is elite NBA offense. You get the ball over as quickly as you can. You get yourself as much time as possible to work on the shot clock in your area in an attacking position. That's what you do. And repeatedly, when you watch the Milwaukee Bucks play, whether it's Giannis bringing the ball to the floor, whether it's Dame bringing the ball to the floor, the Bucks are going to cross probably around 18. And that already takes away your very first action. So you're limiting the number of actions that you can get into. You're limiting how hard you're making the defense work. And this has been a problem for the Bucks all year. And part of that is, of course, you have a guy like Damian Lillard that does like to play at a slower pace.
Right.
That is going to be, you have a guy like, as you mentioned, Dave, Brook Lopez. Believe it or not, at 36-year-old, Brook, a little bit older. And he's 7 feet tall and 280 pounds. This is going to take him a little while to get up the floor. But there's just so many of those things where I don't like to say systemized because it makes it seem like there's not skill or talent involved. But when you watch a team like the Cleveland Cavaliers, it is action after action after action after action. And it doesn't really matter who it is. It could be Donovan Mitchell, it could be Darius Garland, it could be Ty Jerome. Like whoever it is, they're into their stuff right away. The Bucks are never like that. And there are hard things to cover about the Bucks, right? Giannis is a terror. If you get him into a post up, you're going to have to send help. We saw the Pacers do it again and again. But often tonight, when they did do that, his pass was to someone in the final 5 seconds of the shot clock. It would be lovely if that pass was to someone with 12 seconds left on the shot clock, because then it isn't, I have to shoot this. It is, I could shoot it. And if it's not the best look that we have, let's get into another action. Maybe I dribble the ball uphill and it's into a handoff for Damian Lillard to get a shot because Damian Lillard's amazing. Like there's just, those levels aren't there in the Bucks offense. And that's to me how you get to a spot where you have two spectacular individual seasons. You have spectacular 3-point shooting and you have an offense that still finds itself. I would have to look after tonight. I would guess maybe it went up a spot. It's probably 13th or 14th in offensive rating. And that's just not good enough. It can't be when you have two generational offensive players on the same team.
And you think about the fact that the Milwaukee Bucks still have not been able to establish themselves in the Eastern Conference. They haven't beaten the Knicks, they haven't beaten the Cavs, and they haven't beaten Boston Celtics. And you're not going to have a middling offense be able to do that, to be able to surpass or even be thought of in the conversation of who's coming out of the East. So now my question is, break down this like tiebreaker situation, because it's Milwaukee, it's Indiana, and then remember, Detroit got the win over Washington. So they're in this conversation as well, really by point differential. So how does that all break out?
Yeah, I mean, we get to have some fun because the Bucks still have the Pacers one more time on Saturday. The Pistons and the Bucks play each other the final 2 games of the season. Each of both of their final games are against each other. So it's Bucks Pistons for those two. And that's where we get to a spot where it's like, I could lay out everything for you right now, and tomorrow it might be different. The day after it might be different, but like, just know they are all in there. And you got to play some good basketball down the stretch. And for the Milwaukee Bucks, life is going to be pretty difficult over the next little while. They obviously, you can see me, I'm in Indianapolis right now. The Bucks head back to Milwaukee. They play the Los Angeles Lakers on Thursday. That's a break. LeBron is out. Okay, that's cool. But then they have the Indiana Pacers on Saturday. That leads into a back-to-back against the Oklahoma City on Sunday. Then the Milwaukee Bucks go on a 5-game Western Conference road trip. On that 5-game Western Conference road trip, they get the Los Angeles Lakers, which is okay. LeBron will probably be out. That is nice-ish. Not so nice-ish playing the Golden State Warriors. The Kings aren't the best team in the world, but they're going to be fighting for a playoff position. The Phoenix Suns also fighting for a playoff position, fighting for a spot in the play-in, and have Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. That's a tough one. And then, oh, by the way, you end the road trip at Elevation against the Denver Nuggets. That is a hellish 10 or so games. And the Bucks are leading into that by losing 3 straight. So not exactly what you want to be doing. So while I would love to break down the full tiebreakers between 4 and 6 for you, Zena, I think the Bucks have much bigger problems to worry about than tiebreakers.
Absolutely.
Sounds like Eric is thinking like we are, and that the Pistons might make the 4 seed, which would be absolutely absurd. I think that's a good place to wrap it up. That's going to do it for the show, folks. Thank you to Eric Nehm for joining us. Go and read him over at The Athletic. Thank you to Zena Keita, as always. Guys, if you're watching this on YouTube, take a moment, subscribe. And if you're listening to the podcast, go to your favorite podcast app, wherever they take reviews, and give us a 5-star review. Be very nice. If it's not 5 stars, remember, keep it to yourself. Thank you guys for listening as always. Thanks for waking up with us.